Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. A nervous young minister, new to the church, told the flock, "For my text today, I will take the words, 'And they fed 5 men with 5,000 loaves of bread and 2,000 fishes.'" A member of the flock raised his hand and said, "That's not much of a trick. I could do that." The minister didn't respond. However, the next Sunday he decided to repeat the text. This time he did it properly, and they fed 5,000 men with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. Smiling, the minister said to the troublesome man, "Could you do that, Mr. Perkins?" The member of the flock said, "I sure could." The pastor asked, "How would you do it?" With a smile, the man replied, "With all the food I had left over from last Sunday." This week we are exploring some overlooked miracles of Jesus, miracles we don't hear much about on Sundays or which seem overshadowed by other miracles for one reason or another. Our story today comes from the 15th chapter of Matthew and is the story of the feeding of the 4,000. Wait, you might be saying, I thought it was the feeding of the 5,000. And you would be right. When Jesus takes 5 loaves and 2 fishes and feeds 5,000 men, plus women and children, it's an amazing miracle. And in fact, it's the only miracle Jesus does that is in all 4 Gospels. In Matthew, that happens in chapter 14. Then in chapter 15, we have this little story of Jesus feeding 4,000 men, plus women and children. Here's the full story. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I have compassion for the crowd, because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way." The disciples said to him, "Where are we to get enough bread in the desert to feed so great a crowd?" Jesus asked them, "How many loaves have you?" They said, 7, and a few small fish. Then ordering the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and after giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all of them ate and were filled, and they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. Those who had eaten were 4,000 men, besides women and children. After sending away the crowds, he got in the boat and went away to the region of Magadan. Now, there are some minor details that are different, the numbers of fish and loaves and the number of baskets left over, but essentially it's the same miracle as before. Which might lead us to ask, why did Jesus do this twice? We are looking at this miracle in Matthew, but you can also find it in the Gospel of Mark, and the differences between the two tell an interesting tale. In Mark, this miracle happens on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. While that may not seem so significant, it really is. You see, that was Gentile territory. Jesus did this miracle outside of Israel, and the location makes a very powerful point. It says that the grace of God isn't confined just to Israel or to its land. Rather, God's grace and action on behalf of people is given to everyone, regardless of who they are or where they come from. However, we are reading the passage from Matthew, and the story is changed just enough to be geographically indistinct. In Matthew, it's not clear which side of the Sea of Galilee Jesus is on, and that means that the point Mark is making isn't the same point that Matthew wants to make. So we are back to, why did Jesus do this twice? Scholars have debated it over the years, but the best answer actually seems to be both simple and profound at the same time. Jesus did this miracle twice because that's what Messiahs do. The point in Matthew is that Jesus comes in compassion and care for everyone, but especially for those in need. What Jesus was about was generously to give compassion and care. That's what Saviors do. That's what Jesus did. That's what Jesus does. You see, the very fact that this overlooked miracle was repeated tells us the kind of Messiah we have. And the compassion and care Jesus showed here tells us that just so, Jesus has compassion and care for us. And his generous love and grace will fill our own hungers and meet our own needs. He didn't do it with the leftovers from the first time. No, Jesus' love and grace and care and compassion is unending and new every day. That's what Saviors do. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.